not expect this many people here today, I have to say. Thought it was going to be a skeleton crew. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's City Council workshop portion of our meeting. This morning, we only have one workshop item, and I would ask if you would please at this time silence your cell phones. And we will welcome Tony Denny and Lee Fry, who has a little laryngitis, so I don't know if Lee's going to do a lot of talking today. But Tony Denny is going to come talk with us about our legislative update in 2025 preview, and we'll discuss some of our priorities for the upcoming legislative session.
Okay, mic working okay? Everybody hear me?
We can hear
All right,
you.
well, good morning, Mayor, members of council, and Fox and the excellent staff team. It's an honor to be here this morning. It's certainly always a privilege to be able to support Myrtle Beach and the activities in the General Assembly and support your efforts here. So I think I can tell you this, we're not going to need an hour, but we have plenty of time for questions and discussion and kind of make this an open forum. If you want to do that, stop me at any point. And we'll talk about some of the issues coming up in 25, maybe look back at some of the things we did well, and then always looking to improve on the things that we need to do better. So we'll jump right in here, and like I said, stop at any point if you want to ask a question. So let's see, make sure we've got our new technology. All right, I got this figured out, the arrows. Okay, so just a quick look back, refresher on 22, 23, 24 budget years and some of the work we've done within the budget on securing funding. Every year is different, but I think it's important to at least be mindful of kind of where we've come from on this. And every budget year is different based on the numbers that are available and the work we have to do. But just a quick refresher, $30 million for the outfalls, $5 million downtown revitalization from 23, and then an increase in 24 to $10 million. There is $1 million a year in the budget recurring for outfalls. That's recurring funding that should stay in the budget unless someone were to take it out, right? So, and I realize we talked about this, outfalls are expensive. North Myrtle Beach is part of that recurring. It's $1 million apiece, right? So, but outfalls are, Fox, I know we've talked about that. I mean, they're not cheap to do, and so we'll keep that in there, and then we can discuss where that is on kind of on the priority list. So that's just a quick look back at the last couple of budget years. There's some smaller items around Myrtle Beach and other things we've worked on, but those are the largest projects that we've kind of focused on. So look back at 24, and I do this because the issues that come up oftentimes are for 25 and 26 are issues that the General Assembly maybe talked about or came up in 23 and 24 and didn't get completed, right? So you'll see some of the same issues that'll recur ongoing, and that's true with some of these things. So anyway, these are bills that passed that we followed or had some impact on Myrtle Beach or some interest. Didn't always oppose them or support them, but were involved at some level. We talked about recovery houses. This was a kind of a modest step to provide some certification for the recovery houses that operate, who heretofore have been completely unregulated. So kind of a middle ground, maybe off to a good start. Firefighters' cancer health benefits, abandoned buildings tax credit got reauthorized. That's something that Myrtle Beach and developers have made use of here in terms of the revitalization efforts on some of the buildings downtown. Trail easements, constitutional carry. I know this was something that the police chief was, and other police chiefs across the state, law enforcement had concerns about. It passed. Enough said. At constitutional carry, I understand Councilman Louder shaking his head as a law enforcement guy. That's, to be fair, that's the term that supporters refer to it as constitutional carry. So income tax deductions for firefighters, law enforcement. Judicial merit selection is something that Chairman Rankin is very involved in, the Judiciary Committee, reform on how we screen judges, and a bill that defines what anti-Semitism is, right? So we talked about that a little bit in the post-session review we did. Okay, so looking ahead now to 25. So here's just a list of some key dates so everybody's aware of what the time frames are that we're working under and the things that we want to try to accomplish. And where the calendar fits in. So we start session January 14th. That's the second week. It's the second Tuesday after New Year. So we're actually losing a week this year based on the calendar. So the session is going to be 1 week shorter unless it's extended. The governor will release his executive budget early January, presidential inauguration. The Board of Economic Advisors, and we'll talk about this a little more in a moment, they released their initial revenue estimate for the 25-26 budget year. There'll be an update to that estimate in February. So when the economy is growing, doing well, those estimates typically go up as the session progresses. There'll be 2 more estimates before the state budget is completed, all right? So we'll see. It just totally depends on the economy and no way to predict that. But BEA estimate February 13th. The House will, for our work on the House side, we'll submit and work on budget requests in January and February. The full House will take up a budget the week of March 10th. However, in the last couple of cycles, the House has not done a lot of the project funding in the first round of the budget. If you remember, they'll pass a lean budget, call it a skinny budget, and then the Senate will go, and then when the budget goes back to the House is when they'll do additional funding for projects. So some of the things that we worked on, and including other things around Horry County, didn't actually go in the budget until that second pass when the budget went back to the House. So don't know what that schedule is going to be this year. So crossover April 10th. Actually, the Senate, when we put this together, the Senate took the crossover deadline out of their rules. You hear a lot about crossover when bills die. It was more of a symbolic deadline than a real deadline, so anyway, that's not a big deal. Senate budget week, the Senate will pass their budget tentative now the week of April 21st, so that's when it's starting to get real. We're down to a few weeks in terms of the budget projects that we may be working on. Session ends May 8th. House and Senate are pre-filing bills. A little note about that. You'll read a lot about pre-filed bills in the news. Hundreds of bills get pre-filed. A lot of bills that get pre-filed make news but don't necessarily go anywhere, okay? Not true with all of them, but in many cases, pre-filed bills, a bill that's pre-filed doesn't necessarily get taken up sooner. A bill gets taken up in a committee when the chairman decides to take it up, right? So a pre-filed bill doesn't really, under the rules, isn't at the head of the line or doesn't have an advantage over a bill filed in February. It's just an opportunity for members to get something in early, and the media looks at them, and so we'll see. For a lot of the things we work on, business issues, we don't pre-file bills. If a bill's going to be contested, essentially you're just giving people that might be against it a month to get ready, right? So, but you'll read about a lot of pre-file bills, all right? So just a heads up on that. All right, so budget. So revenue. The first BEA estimate that was a couple of weeks ago, so new recurring revenue, 533. For those that are new, the recurring revenue is what the state uses to pay salaries, to pay state troopers, to pay state employees, school teachers. So, because that money's going to be there, that's money that you can count on to be there year after year. Non-recurring revenue is a compilation of surpluses from the previous budget year, the current budget year. So non-recurring revenue is typically what they use, what the General Assembly will appropriate for projects, whether that's local government projects, state agency purchases, one-time things, infrastructure, bridges, road work. All right, so a little bit about the surplus, to put it in context. Now, and this is something I think Brian and I talked about yesterday a little bit. So non-recurring, the surplus, because our economy's good, our state's growing, and it's important to note that Myrtle Beach has a big hand in that state's growth and in that tax revenue, and that's something that, working with the mayor, that we remind our General Assembly friends from other parts of the state that we are a tourism economy here as a revenue generator. So we're certainly a part of this good news, right? And we need to remind folks of that. But the surplus of $1.12 billion, that's a little, at this time a year ago, the projected surplus was maybe $100 million less than that, or a little more than $100 million below that. However, a caveat is that number, need to put that in context. There's going to be somewhat of a significant hit to the budget from Hurricane Helene, the damage there. The state's got to pay a match to FEMA for some of these repairs. There's bridge damage. I haven't heard a firm number, but it's a substantial number. I don't know if it's $100 million or $200 million, but it's not nothing. So there's a hit to the state budget coming on this hurricane damage that affected not so much the coast, but over half the counties in the state had some level of damage, and I think you've all read about that. So FEMA covers some for the first 90 days, but then there's a portion that FEMA doesn't cover. So, and there's other, just to give you a sense of that surplus, 1.12 billion. State agencies, if you look online and add up all of the non-recurring requests from state agencies, the prison system and Department of Juvenile Justice and Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, all those combined, I think, are close to 4 billion requests for non-recurring revenue. So I don't know the exact number, but haven't added it up. It won't all get funded, but suffice it to say, the requests far exceed the surplus, right? So I just want to, at the risk of downplaying expectations, it's not like that $1 billion is all waiting to go for local projects, because the first obligation of the General Assembly is to fund state agencies. So how much of that, we've had success in previous years, I think, making our case. And I know when we look back at some of the funding we have gotten, I know the mayor has been, I think we've put a lot of miles on your car coming to high-impact meetings and making sure that not only working with our own ORI delegation, which we've done, and try to get a team effort going locally, because we do have a good delegation, but working with leadership in the General Assembly who are from cities and counties hundreds of miles away from here to make sure they remember Myrtle Beach and Horry County and the critical role we play in the state's tourism industry and otherwise. So we've had some success in that, and we got to keep doing it. So that's a little bit about the surplus. Happy to take any questions or wait till we get done. Now, 25 priorities, and we're at the stage where we're still kind of talking about this, working with Fox and Brian and the mayor and council, and discussing what are the areas where we might have the most success in legislators wanting to fund something in Myrtle Beach, right? So we've done well with infrastructure. I suspect we'll stick with that. We've still got ongoing work going on with downtown redevelopment, so we'll probably kind of try to build on that success. For the ORI delegation, been very helpful last year. We got everybody in the delegation kind of going in the same direction, supporting what we were working on, but a few new things this year. Kevin Hardy from Horry County is now on Ways and Means. When they did committee assignments first week of December, he moved to Ways and Means. The other Ways and Means member, the Money Committee, is Heather Crawford from Socastee, who again has been a strong supporter of what we're trying to do in Myrtle Beach, even though her district doesn't include a lot of Myrtle Beach. So we've had a countywide approach, and we work with our own Myrtle Beach members. Certainly Senator Rankin, Representative Britton, been very on it. But the good news for Horry County is we have a big delegation, so there is advantage in numbers. So we'll continue to try to have a unified front with the entire county delegation, but at the same time working with leaders statewide. So funding requests. Just got a list here of items that we've talked about. Beach renourishment. I think Fox and I have discussed a potential project. Last year in the budget, beach renourishment did not get funded on a high level. PRT put a request in for some beach renourishment. I think it's accurate to say there are some leaders on Senate Finance who haven't prioritized beach renourishment, don't see it as a priority. So we've got to work on that. That's not just Myrtle Beach. I mean, it's obviously an issue in other parts of the coast, right? So Isle of Palms and Folly Beach and other places are asking. And if it hasn't gotten in the budget, there's a reason. We've got some folks, I think it's not a good, they see it as sort of a temporary thing, right? So we got to work on that. There's one specific project that Fox and I have discussed that's the partnership between the city and the county.
Yeah, it's Acadian Shores. We're scheduled for a beach renourishment from the Army Corps next year, and we'll be okay, but it's stopped. I don't know how the Corps draws their lines, but they draw their lines and it stops at Acadian Shores and it picks up after there. So I think around the Singleton Swash area, there is no renourishment. So we talked to Tony about a joint opportunity with the county. We both go make a request and see if we can get that small portion taken care of, because it's like $6 or $7 million bucks.
There has been a bill that Senator Campson, who represents a good bit of the Charleston area coast and goes all the way down to Beaufort, represents Kiowa, Seabrook. It's a huge part of the coast. He's put a bill in to establish recurring funding for beach renourishment. There's no recurring funding in the budget for beach renourishment. When it's gotten in the budget, it's been one-time temporary. And that bill did not advance in the Senate, and it came out of his committee, but did not get taken up in Senate Finance. So we're kind of we're kind of stuck on beach renourishment, but this, working with the county together, we may be able to garner some support. So that's something that we'll be discussing with staff going forward. And then we've talked about public safety enhancements, downtown revitalization, and the Arts and Innovation District continues to be a priority. And I think last year, Chairman of Ways and Means came down and toured that. So we've done a lot of work with the mayor, reaching out to leaders statewide so they understand what we're trying to accomplish there. All right, legislation of interest. Touch base on a few things. Short-term rentals. We're playing defense on that. Cities aren't asking for a bill on short-term rentals, but some of the short-term rental online companies are trying to put something on the books that would prevent cities from having ordinances that either eliminate your right to regulate or to determine short-term rentals within your city, right? So that's a problem. Municipal Association is kind of our partner in that, but we're going to have to keep educating. And I know, Councilman Smith, I mean, you've talked to our senators locally. I know y'all have all worked on this. It's been a team effort, making sure our legislators understand the impact that has here in terms of your neighborhoods. I got a feeling that's going to be an issue, but don't know whether that'll gain any momentum. Kind of got stalled last year, but it has not gone away. We can talk more about that. You've read about this in the news, but front and center is going to be energy legislation from dealing with how we generate more power to pay for all the power we need for people moving here, data centers. House and Senate both have bills, so something is going to get done. It's a top priority, I think, for Senator Rankin. Santee Cooper's involved on their needs for more natural gas, so that's going to be a big issue. And then how do we pay for all that, right? So that's probably going to be one of the first bills up, along with a fix to this. If anybody follows school choice, the bill that the Supreme Court ruled that the school choice scholarships, the education savings accounts were unconstitutional. You're going to see the House and Senate probably take up a bill to address that pretty quickly to try to get something solved there so that it can be constitutional. Hate crime legislation, I bring this up I know the city's been supportive. The mayor submitted a letter on this. The city's on record as supporting hate crime legislation. In the Senate, it has been stuck. Unless something changes, it's probably not going anywhere again, but we'll see. House has passed a hate crime bill twice. So it's a topic, and city's on record being supportive, and I assume we would be again, but we'll see. A lot of senators just had some concerns about certain things in the bill. We'll see. I put that on there just as a FYI. State income tax reduction, you may have seen this, the Speaker and on the Senate side, both sides are wanting to reduce the state income tax. Last year it dropped it to the top rate to 6.2. So that has an impact to the budget, meaning that's recurring revenue. So if we're gonna make substantial cuts to state income tax, that money's got to come from somewhere. So that affects the money in the budget that can be spent on other things. So we'll just have to kind of see where that goes. I don't know if anybody's following it, but we have an issue where the pass-through income, LLC, small businesses are taxed at a lower rate already, but it's not. A lot of folks don't even know that. So they're trying to reconcile how we get a more competitive income tax system. So that is a priority. Mental health, opioid overdose legislation. This is something that I talked to the mayor about this earlier, that several years ago we had a proviso in the budget that Alan Clemens and others were involved in that it kind of went away, but I know that's a big issue here, addressing the opioid crisis, so we'll be on the lookout for potential opportunities there. So that's kind of our menu and maybe a beginning of a game plan. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions from council? Tony, with the House reorg last week, are there any other than Representative Hardy going on Ways and Means, any other changes on committees that we need to be aware of?
Well, as a general rule, we had good committee assignments. Senator Hembry chairs the Education Committee. He's a senior member of Finance. Senator Goldfinch is on Finance. Senator Rankin chairs the Judiciary Committee. So that's all a good story and status quo, right? I don't know, Lee, do we have any other big changes on, sometimes they're changing on the minor committees. Ways and Means is obviously the big one. We have any other committee changes that specific to Horry County? I mean, we had, Representative Britton is still on Judiciary Committee, which is where he was last year, so no change there. And a lot of big things go through Judiciary. Same with Val Guest, so I think, and then Heather continues to be a member of Ways and Means, so it's good. I think we got a good delegation and good committee assignments that'll help us in our efforts, so.
Any questions? All right. Soon it'll be time to get back to work.
It is.
Well, already.
Well, that, I was gonna say, that time was some time ago, right? I mean, the session, the activities are always front-loaded, right? So we always gotta be ahead of the game, and we'll be, as usual, we'll be putting the mayor to work, where it makes sense to, so, thank you.
Well, and I want council to know that Tony and Lee do a great job of making sure that we get in front of the right people at the right time. And a lot of times, that's a last-minute leadership meeting, roundtable meetings, and things like that. And you wouldn't think it's important for us to be there, but I think it's been a huge part of why we have been successful.
Well, thank you.
So thank you both for
It's an
that.
honor to work on it, so thank you. Y'all, everybody has our number and knows where to find us, so.
Thank you for making the drive this morning.
On time, right?
On time, yes. All right, Will, do we have time to do this executive session item?
We do.
Okay, we do have, I would ask for a motion to go into executive session to receive legal advice relating to interpretation of ordinances within Chapter 15 of the Municipal Code, and to discuss negotiations concerning proposed contractual arrangements with oceanfront developer relating to the 23rd Avenue PUD. The following people are invited to attend: Fox Simons, Will Bryan, Brian Tucker, Josh Bruger, Michelle Schumpert, Marla Bell, Patrick Lloyd, Amy Newshafer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Ms. Connor, second from Mr. Chestnut. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries, and we will go into the side room. there a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Our council meeting will begin at 10 a.m. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's City Council meeting. This is our last meeting of 2024, believe it or not. And this year has flown by, and I will give my appreciation to this council and our staff because we've had a very productive and a very good year. So thank you all. I would ask you at this time if you would please silence your cell phones. And if you wish, you can stand and join council for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Louder today.
Father, we come before you today at our meeting here, Lord. We just remind everyone and the blessings that we continue to receive in life and how blessed we are as a community as a whole. And we also are reminded, Lord, that there are a number of communities that are not so as blessed as we are today. And as we enter into this season of giving, and we just want to remember that those folks that are in the western part of the state and in North Carolina and Tennessee, Lord, that they're not going to have the Christmas, so to speak, that they had last year and years before. Things are going to be a lot different in those areas, and we just ask you to continue to give your blessings and be with those folks as they face the challenges as they're facing today, Lord. Now, as we continue through our meeting today, we just ask your guidance and your presence, Lord, in everything that we do, that all of our decisions today will be the best for the city of Myrtle Beach. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, before we approve today's agenda, we have several amendments to make. First of all, on our consent agenda, we have motions 2024-97 and 2024-98. The amounts on both of those need to be changed from $2,000 to $5,000. If you would make that note, please. And then on our regular agenda, pages 4 and 5, the last two items need to be changed to motions 2024-100 and 2024-101. The numbers were out of sequence there, so if you would please change those. And with those changes, I will ask if there is a motion to approve today's amended agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made from Mr. Louder, second from Mr. Chestnut. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. I'll ask for a motion to approve our meeting minutes from November 12th, 2024.
So moved. Second.
Motion from Dr. Connors, second from Ms. Hatley. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move on to our public information update.
Hey City Council, it's Erin Bowling here with a Communications and Creative Services update.
Light that tree!
Myrtle Beach kicked off the holiday season in style at the Winter Wonderland at the Beach tree lighting ceremony on November 30th. Hundreds of people showed up to Plyler Park to enjoy snow, pictures with Santa, and performances from local groups. The Winter Wonderland at the Beach light display will be on every night through January 4th along the boardwalk. The city's Arbor Day ceremony took place last week at Ballard Memorial Garden. The event recognized local businesses for their commitment to area green spaces. Congratulations to all the winners. Local kids had the chance to go Christmas shopping with Myrtle Beach firefighters and police officers over the weekend at the annual Shop with a Hero event. Our public safety employees took the kids from the train depot to Target on Seaboard Street to pick out what they wanted for Christmas this year. The Myrtle Beach Professional Firefighters Association held a pancake breakfast over the weekend at St. John the Baptist Greek Orthodox Church. Kids had the chance to take free photos with Santa and mingle with local firefighters. More holiday events are on the horizon. Myrtle Beach's 4th annual Polar Express is this Friday and Saturday at the train depot from 5 to 9. Kids can enjoy showings of the movie, holiday hay rides, face paint, balloon art, hot chocolate, popcorn, story time with Chapin Memorial Library, and more. Light up your bikes for the upcoming holiday slow roll. Bicyclists will meet at Grand String Brewing Company Thursday at 6 with bikes decked out in holiday Christmas lights. They'll ride along the boardwalk and enjoy food, drinks, and Troy trivia. Jazz in the Stacks returned to Chapin Memorial Library last week. The public will have the chance to watch free jazz performances from local musicians every Tuesday evening at 5:30 from January 7th to March 4th. That's all for now. We hope you guys have a great rest of your holiday season.
All right, thank you. And we'll move on to today's consent agenda, please. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any non-agenda items from the public?
Yes, ma'am. Mark Sowers.
Please, and if you would, again, state your name and your address for the record.
Sure. My name's Mark Sowers. I'm at 3485 Bristol Lane. That's in the St. James Square area.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, esteemed council members, city executives, thank you for letting me speak to you today. I wanted to talk to you about parks. I'm a big fan of parks. I love parks. Open spaces, bike lanes, picnic tables, ponds, and things like that, they're great. What you guys have down at the south end with Grand Park, and especially the new Thunderbolt Park, love it. Love to ride around Thunderbolt Park. The new bridge is fantastic. I just wish it was a little closer. See, I live up in the north end, and it takes me a good 20 minutes or so to get down there, and then 20 minutes to get back. So if I have an hour to relax, that's 40 minutes in traffic. That's not really relaxing. So I ask you to consider the large city-owned property next to the Myrtle Beach Sports Center, which I understand is newly not spoken for. It already has a great pond. It already has lots of trees and lots of open space. And it already has parking for events. It already has, key to me, 2 multi-use paths on 2 sides of the property already. I think completing the other 2 sides would be a fairly easy job, and adding a few features there would be nice as well. And one of those paths is the East Coast Greenway, which spreads across the entire city, which means for a large section of the city, people could walk to or bike to this property. It would become a destination for people using the East Coast Greenway. I think it'd be a really nice addition to preserve this one of the last remaining open spaces, open green spaces in the area for city public use. And I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate you for being here.
Sir.
That's it. That's all? Okay, now consent agenda, please.
Excuse me. Yes, ma'am. For this morning's consent agenda, you have 5 items for your consideration. First item is motion 2024-94, authorizing the city to apply for a grant in the amount of $1,002,636 from the Horry County CTC Committee through the SCDOT for the purpose of resurfacing state-owned roadways. That would be matched with our FY25 annual resurfacing budget of $1.74 million. You may recall we had a workshop item on this last week from Ms. Curry. Next item for your consideration is motion 2024-95, authorizing the city to accept a grant, in the amount of $16,054 from, the South Carolina Department of Public Health. I'm still used to saying DHEC. For the purpose of purchasing mosquito control equipment and supplies. There is no match for that grant. The third item is motion 2024-96, approving an MOU between the Myrtle Beach Police Department and the U.S. Department of Affairs. This is to allow our police officers interagency cooperation at the Veterans Medical Center out there at ITAP and Air Park Road. And the next two items are motion 2024-97 to accept a donation in the amount of $5,000 from Bradley Housing Developers on behalf of Neighborhood Services for its outreach program. And the last item is motion 2024-98 to accept a donation in the amount of $5,000 from Tuscan Properties on behalf of Neighborhood Services for its outreach programs.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve today's consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Louder, second from Dr. Connor. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. The first item on our regular agenda is the second reading of ordinance 2024-65.
Second reading of ordinance 2024-65 to amend the Ocean Village PUD to address a 1.7 acre portion of the property located along North Kings Highway and 52nd Avenue North, TMS number 17406-18022.
Good morning, everyone. There's been no changes since first reading at this time. I do believe that Tucker had sent an email out with the parking requirement calculations that you had all asked for at the last meeting. And I know the developers here in the audience, happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Don't go away yet, Cameron. Is there a motion for approval for the second reading of ordinance 2024-65?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Dr. Connor, second I heard Mr. Smith. Okay. Any discussion from council? I just wanted to thank you for the very detailed explanation on parking. I did ask Fox, I said, I just don't understand the half of a parking space, but now it made sense, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Any discussion from the public? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Second reading of ordinance 2024-66.
Second reading of ordinance 2024-66 to amend the Code of Ordinances, the City of Myrtle Beach, Appendix A, Zoning, Article 5, Board of Zoning Appeals, Section 505, Procedures to add new Section 505C, Time Limitations.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
As from our last visit, no changes to the ordinance.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 2024-66?
So moved. Second.
Motion from Mr. Louder, second from Mr. Chestnut. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All right, Charles, thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a great holiday.
You too. Merry Christmas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Second reading of ordinance 2024-67.
Second reading of ordinance 2024-67 to amend ordinance number 2023-26 and 2023-24 budget ordinance, recognizing material events and their impacts upon the 2023-24 budget and reconciling budgets with audited results.
Much like the last two, there have been no changes since second reading.
First reading.
First reading.
Okay, is there a motion to approve second reading of ordinance 2024-67?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Smith, second from Mr. Chestnut. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Second reading of ordinance 2024-69.
Second reading of ordinance 2024-69 to amend the Code of Ordinances, the City of Myrtle Beach, Appendix A, Zoning, Article 18, Overlay Zones, to add new Section 1808, Short-Term Rental Conversion Overlay Zone for commercial districts east of Kings Highway, preventing conversion of short-term rental use to long-term rental use.
Yes, ma'am. This is, as clerk read, the second reading. We had first reading last Tuesday at a special called meeting. Just for some clarifying points, this moratorium has been in place since April. During last week's discussion, there was conversation about the length of 89 versus 90 days versus 119, 20, 150. We did look at that and meet with that, and that if there are any changes in the date from 89 to 90 to something else, it becomes very, very challenging for everybody. All our financial systems here and at the state are based on quarters. So that becomes a very problematic situation if that were to change. And the state's definitions of short-term rentals is 89 to 90 days. So we recommend keeping the ordinance as it's written. The ordinance did go to the Planning Commission for 2 public meetings, one on November the 5th and another one on November the 19th, where there was a public hearing, and the Planning Commission voted 8-0 for no changes to come to City Council. The Planning Commission found in their vote that it is consistent with the land use and economic development elements of the comprehensive plan. Further, as we discussed last week, if we do pass this on second reading and we do find that there's issues or something that comes up in 60 days, 6 months, a year, whatever, we can change it. It is not open heart surgery where something, we can change it. We do have that ability. So I know Brian's got some other clarifying things, and I think Will may have something for your consideration as well.
Again, as Fox said, we tried to go back after we heard the comments, both from the public and from you all last time, and try to make sure and just take another look at this, another run at this, and see if there were any changes that we thought we should look at. As Fox mentioned, Planning Commission found that the language here is consistent with the comp plan, and one of the things we heard several times throughout the moratorium and throughout the comments from last week was, can we shrink the boundary? Can we look at either moving it closer to Ocean Boulevard and not get so much of the east of Kings? But again, back to the comp plan comments, Planning Commission recognizes, I think we recognize, everything east of Kings Highway is our main tourism asset. It's our main visitor accommodation corridor. And so with that in mind, we feel like to be consistent with the moratorium language, to be consistent with the comp plan and the appropriate land use east of Kings, that's why the boundary is what it is we just, again, consider everything east of Kings Highway the main tourism accommodations corridor and would like to maintain that and preserve that to the greatest degree possible. The other thing that we continue to hear is a little bit of confusion about what is and what is not covered. And so I want to elaborate on that a little bit. Honestly, one of the speakers last week raised a question that we had not contemplated, which was, what if I own a condo? I have always owned the condo. I have never rented the condo, never had a business license for my condo. Am I prevented now from getting a long-term business license? The answer is no, because that's not a conversion. We did want to think through that and make sure that that was consistent with the intent of the moratorium and in the intent of the ordinance, and we feel like it is. So just to clarify, if you have a unit that has never been a commercial unit, it's always either been your primary residence or your second home, and you've never rented it out, there is no business license associated with it, you would be able to either convert it yourself to short-term or long-term, or if you sold that unit, the new buyer would be able to convert it to either short-term or long-term. Okay, so I think we are very comfortable with that. Again, if you are currently, again, the intent was if you are currently operating a unit that has an appropriate, proper, long-term business license, the ordinance change will allow you to continue to operate it long-term. That's not going to change. If you have a short-term unit and you want to keep operating it short-term, doesn't impact you here. And so I think, to the degree we can offer some clarification, if you've got any specific examples you'd like for me to hit on, we can talk through that before we move down any further, or we're happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Well, I think another scenario is if you have a current long-term license, you're renting it out, and you sell it to someone else, they can keep the long-term license.
Correct. Yes, that is correct. That is the intent.
The only real thing here is if someone has a license or is without a license, renting short-term, they're not going to be able to convert to long-term.
Correct. This is specifically targeting, trying to identify or limit the conversion of short-term business license to long-term business license in order to preserve that short-term inventory.
Okay, let's get a motion on the table.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Motion from Mr. Louder, second from Ms. Hatley.
Your Honor, before you go into discussion, I'd like to request that ordinance 2024-69, I'd like to request the council consider an amendment to add an exception, making it clear that owners who are currently operating with a long-term business license can continue using their unit as a long-term rental so long as they maintain their long-term license. And so my request is that this ordinance be amended to add subsection 1808D, and it read that 1808D would be labeled exception, and the exception would read as follows. Owners of units within the overlay zone that are legally operating with a business license for long-term rental at the time of adoption may continue to use the licensed unit as a long-term rental so long as the owner maintains the business license for long-term rental. So it puts into our ordinance what we've been talking about, protecting the right of those persons who currently have a business license to operate and rent long-term. It ensures that they will be accepted from this ordinance and allowed to continue to rent on a long-term basis so long as they maintain their long-term business license.
Okay, is there a motion to accept those amendments, those changes?
So moved.
We'll have discussion.
Second.
So a motion made from Mr. Smith and a second from Dr. Connor to accept those, the changes, those amendments to this ordinance. Any discussion from council?
Yes, ma'am. Will, if you're going to include that language in there about a person who, if they currently have a long-term business license, they can continue.
Yes, sir.
Then, just as a point of clarification, then, should it not be added also that if a person owns a unit and they've never had a business license or they sell that property to someone else, that person could obtain a long-term business license? I know that's a lot of verbiage, but if we're going to go down that path on one way, I think in order for it to be very clear, that we should add that verbiage in there that way as well.
Are you suggesting that persons who've been operating illegally without a business license renting long-term?
No. The person who has a condo, and it's been a second home, or it's a home that they've lived in, and all of a sudden they decide they want to rent it, then they are able to obtain a business license to do that.
I hear you. I think, well, Will, do you want to answer that? Or do you want me to answer that? I think we believe, and Will can correct me if I'm wrong, but right now, the way the ordinance is written, I think already allows for that, but, you know.
I just want to make sure that we're all clear, we're all on the same page, and folks that, like folks that spoke here last week, understand that, well, my family's had this unit for 30 years, and we may want to sell it. So if we sell it, then the person who buys it, they're able to obtain a business license to rent it long-term. And what you've been explaining is that sounds like that's what they can do. But all in all, I just want to make sure that we've got it all on the table for a lot of questions that we've answered, but is it actually written in the ordinance that way?
Mr. Tucker, I think it's worth clarifying that next owner could perhaps get a long-term business license so long as the unit was built as a long-term accommodation and that unit was never rented short-term. If it was built as a short-term or transient accommodation, or during its history it was rented as a short-term accommodation, it would not be able to be used long-term, even with a second owner.
Let's just clarify that. That's all I'm saying about it.
So you think it's okay as amended?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to add what I've requested to be added to make
Yes.
sure that those persons operating legally with a business license will continue to be allowed to operate on a long-term basis so long as they continue to maintain their long-term business license.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second to do just that.
One more question there, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Brian, I just want to make sure, though, the question that was asked last week, and I think it was Mr. Bob, does that protect him, though?
Yes. The one that owns it, lives in it.
Owns it,
Hopes to sell it one day.
hopes to sell it?
Yes, it does protect him.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
he
wanna
will-
be
he would
clear.
be able to sell it. Subsequent owner would be able to get a long-term business license or a short-term business license.
And I call his name, but he said there was many other people who were in that same situation, I believe.
There was a number of them here last week with that same concern.
And I'm guessing the verbiage saying conversion prohibited is the key part. So we're not going explicitly into what's not a conversion. We're only talking about conversion here.
Correct. I think the distinction that our attorney was trying to make a minute ago is in his particular case, that building was constructed as a long-term rental or ownership residential building. Right? So that's the distinction there, and I think that's what the attorney is trying to make sure of is in that instance, that would be the case.
Okay? Okay.
Voting on the amendment, correct?
Is there, yes, is there any discussion from the public on the amendment itself? Okay, there being none, all those in favor of the amendments, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We'll now vote on the amended motion of ordinance 2024-69. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. What was this, be the same discussion as on the amendment? You have, is there any discussion, Alex? Okay. And just 1 second, please. Sir in the front row, thank you for coming in this morning. Would you please remove your hat while we're in council? Thank you. I appreciate that.
Alex Fogel. I apologize. I actually need to speak on behalf of somebody else who couldn't be here today. She tested positive for COVID, and she asked me to speak for her. So I have her words here. Nora Hutchinson, a city resident. She wrote, "This ordinance remained unchanged from its first reading despite the public input shared at the previous meeting. Council and staff stated multiple times that this did not affect current owners, that it is not accurate. It affects the resale value of our units by limiting the rental use of short-term only. I believe this ordinance is an overreach, disproportionate in its approach, and akin to using a sledgehammer to hang a picture. It risks unintended consequences by treating the owner of a single condo unit in a residential building the same as the owner of a resort or hotel, which seems unjustifiable. An exception is already made for single-family homes and buildings with 2 or fewer units, i.e. duplexes. This should be expanded to owners of a single condo unit in residential buildings. Does this also apply to townhomes, like the new development Promenade at Grand Dunes? As a computer programmer and analyst, I have seen 2 approaches when implementing new programs. The first involves careful coding and thorough testing to ensure data integrity, significantly reducing cost and risk. This is the generally accepted right way to code. The second is the easy way. Quickly code and deploy with minimal testing, which almost guarantees problems, unintended consequences, and complicates recovery. With the first approach, any problems are addressed and used as learning experiences for future projects. The second approach, however, tends to frustrate users, corrupt data, and can result in unintended professional impacts. In the last meeting, I heard council and staff acknowledge the ordinance's imperfections and plans to address unintended consequences later. For example, Mayor Bethune said several times, Brian Tucker, Greg Smith's motion to approve, and Mike Chestnut seconded the motion to approve. I urge you to reconsider this ordinance instead of pushing it forward in this current form. Please take the time to ensure it achieves its intended goals while minimizing negative impacts. Please take the right path, not the easy one. Thank you for your time and consideration." That was Nora's. Now, I think a lot of you know where I live on 4th Avenue North. I have a home there that's not really affected by this. But my proximity to the boardwalk and Ocean Boulevard allows us to meet a lot of people who do live in the resorts from Sandy Beach all the way to Roxanne Towers. So we know a lot of the owners. We also get to know a lot of the people who come to visit long-term during the winter. I have Pete and Ruth, Vernon and Carol, Randy and Patty, Hoppy and Denise, Mike and Cindy. John and Harriet haven't come back this year, have they, John, Mike?
I've talked to him as late as last night.
Okay. But these are people who come here regularly, and we've gotten to know them over the years, become friends. Every one of them stays 91 days at least, because they want the rebate on the accommodation tax. A lot of these people are here in town already, renting against the moratorium, primarily because it's not clear. Resorts like the Bayview, Roxanne Towers, they're not letting people know that they can't rent for 91 days. So they're here with the expectation they're going to get their money back after 91 days. I think that if you compare a single owner condo or property unit to a multi-owner resort, you're comparing apples to fire trucks. I think you can do better. And I hope you do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion from the public? Okay, I'll ask, yes.
I've never been to city council before. Thank you for your hard work. I just have a quick
Would you
question.
please state your name and address for the record?
Karen Sauls, 1175 Shire Way, Myrtle Beach. Just have a quick question. On in the third section of the ordinance, it says the location. This section applies to all commercial uses pursuant to the Code of Ordinance Appendix A zoning. I referenced that zoning ordinance, and that applies to all commercials, all businesses within that entire district. I thought this was limited to visitor accommodations. I'm wondering, just my comment is more of a question. Why do we have that broad statement that this would apply to all commercial uses when the ordinance is supposed to be tailored to visitor accommodations? Just my question. I have nothing other than that. I will sit because, or do you need me to stay? Okay. Sure.
And again, I will defer to our attorney if this is not the right verbiage, but when we look at that language, the section applies to all commercial uses. There are a number of zoning districts in this area that are commercial zoning districts, and this overlay would sit on top of all of those different zoning districts that do allow short-term and long-term rentals. So that's the rationale for the language. So it is specific to restricting short-term conversions to long-term rentals, but that prohibition, is that a real word?
Mm-hmm.
Prohibition? That prohibition is probably the more correct word there. Sits on top of all of those commercial zoning districts. So the use is this big, but it covers all of these zoning districts.
Does that help you understand that better? You do need to come to the microphone, please.
And you guys are coming at it with a background and your moratorium and all the history and discussion. But if you come at it from a fresh reading of the ordinance with no background, none of the other things, and you simply look at the words, you simply cross-reference the documents, someone could actually take this ordinance and argue that Part 2 applies to visitor accommodation, Part 3 applies to businesses. So you may actually have a problem with things like, I don't know, food trucks, or, I mean, there may be a potential long-term or expansive impact that maybe we didn't anticipate, because if this is all commercial uses, someone could maybe argue that this goes further than you expect.
Well, I believe, and I'm going to ask our attorneys, this is commercial accommodation uses, which are still classified as commercial businesses.
Of course, of course.
Okay.
But when it says all uses, I was just saying when you go to those multi pages, it goes through every single business in Myrtle Beach. Just a thought.
Yeah.
I was just something to think about.
And I understand where you're going with that, and I think my response would be, if and I'm just using this as an example, so I'm not poking fun, but I'm just thinking through the application. If a restaurant, which is a commercial use in this district, they're not gonna hold a short-term business license and apply for a long-term business license. So if that commercial use is not it does not currently hold a short-term business license, short-term rental business license, then this would not impact their operations. I think that's what you're trying, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And welcome to your first city council meeting. We hope you'll come back.
Karen?
Any other discussion from the public? Okay, and we'll retake the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. First reading of ordinance 2024-28.
First reading of ordinance 2024-28 to close and abandon certain alleys between lots 181, 183, 182, and 184 of the eastern section.
Madam Mayor, a motion to continue, please.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Louder to continue, a second from Ms. Hatley. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? Good morning.
Jeff King with King Cunningham, representing the developer. I just wanted to say we have been working with the staff on correcting some of the language, and I understand that perhaps the second row fee is part of, one of the issues, and we can certainly work to hash that out. What we've proposed is how they've all been done in the past. I would just say that, and one option may be for us just to not necessarily move that alley right now. I don't know how that would, we think it'd be better for the project to do that, simply because it creates a bigger alley on the side and all that stuff. But that would be one potential option, and we'll explore others. I just wanted to ask, I know that you've already said to continue, just to get back on track with the other ordinances, we would request that we maybe perhaps first reading, understanding that we look at that at this time, only because these are one meeting behind everything else.
They are, and we have given staff direction to discuss with you. But I believe everybody's ready to move forward with continuing this item today.
Okay.
We'll see how the vote comes out. That's not up to me, that's up to the will of council.
No, I understand. I just wanted to let everybody, that's all we were asking for. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion from the public?
I'll just say that I would be okay with passing first reading today and working on it and then continuing it if it doesn't get done by the second reading.
Okay.
But if y'all want to continue.
I need to know from everyone what you want to do.
We have a motion and a second on the floor.
All right. Any other discussion from council? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. First reading of ordinance 2024-70.
First reading of ordinance 2024-70 to approve a development agreement between the City of Myrtle Beach and IRH Myrtle Beach LLC to provide an incentive voucher as authorized by Section 15-53 of the City Code.
Good morning. We have discussed this project now a number of times. So this is the project at Mr. Joe White Avenue and Grissom Parkway. At that intersection, we continue to refer to it as the J1 dormitory project. We've been working with them for quite some time. If you recall, several months ago, you all took action to consent to the fee in lieu agreement and multi-county park agreement. Part of that whole conversation at the time was the applicant and developer's request to apply for the 2% voucher program. And we've had multiple conversations with you all on that subject, and I believe we reached a consensus that you are inclined to consider a 1% instead of the 2%. That particular program we haven't used a whole lot and is a little cumbersome, and it's taken us a while to get the documents prepared for that. If you've been by that area, you know that they're already well under construction, and we had the groundbreaking there just a bit ago. But we do have the documents ready for you to consider. Part of part of the narrative here is the developer and owner are under a very tight timeline to deliver one building by next season. And as somebody who lives in the construction space, that's an aggressive timeline. So they are not trying to waste any time, and they're plowing ahead trying to get the first building prepared and are making good progress. So it does seem a little, the timing of this is a little out of the norm, but I do want to just review this with you. Just as a reminder, the total project will include 4 different buildings, each housing 300 beds, so you're looking at a total of 1,200 beds once you're at full development. Total development cost is going to be north of $40 million. Again, International Residence Hall and all of the affiliated companies are a national company, very well respected in the industry. When I say the industry, I mean the J1 dormitory housing industry. They do purpose-built J1 dorms in a lot of other tourism districts, and they have been a good partner to date. They have requested the 1% voucher. Again, that would be 1% of the total project cost. We would reimburse them for fees that they have already paid to us. So as of today, they have already written us a check for over $618,000, which is already well in excess of what the 1% would equate to of the total construction cost. Just as a matter of information, they plan to deliver one building with 300 beds by the spring of '25. They'll deliver the second building the following year, and then the 2 final buildings would be in '27. So full build-out will take them about 3 years to complete, but they are extraordinarily motivated and are moving along quite well. The $618,000 that they've paid us amount to $250,000 for water impact fees, so roughly $250,000 for sewer impact fees, and then the remaining $118,000 are building permit fees, business license fees, plan review fees, all of the associated development fees that we require on a $40 million project. So happy to answer specific questions. I know the applicant is here as well, or representative of the applicant is here as well, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2024-70?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Chestnut, second from Dr. Connor. Any discussion or questions from council?
We on track to open the first building on time?
I think so. It looks like it. They're moving at a rapid pace.
It'll be a great addition to the J1 student experience in this area.
If I could actually say something, I think we talked about this a lot during some of the prior conversations, but the J1 student population for us is an amazing surge for our seasonal workforce, and we are increasingly competing for the best of those students, and having appropriate accommodations to house those students that's safe, secure, purpose-built. That makes a big difference in us being able to attract the types of people here that we want to represent City of Myrtle Beach and when they interact with our visitors. So.
And also when they go home and they tell people of the great experience they had in Myrtle Beach.
Yes.
Agree. All right, thank you, Mr. Tucker. Any other discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Motion 2024-99.
Motion 2024-99, authorizing the city manager or his designee to accept grants in the amount of $10 million from South Carolina Department of Commerce and the South Carolina Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism for the purpose of downtown revitalization of upgraded streets, sidewalks, crosswalks, parking, and innovation advancement through co-work incubator and living lab planning and design.
You'll recall this morning, Mr. Denny talked about the $10 million that we were given by the state this past year. $7 million of that we've already slated to offset the cost of that bond issue for the downtown infrastructure. The other 3 million will be used for possibly additional infrastructure and other innovation improvements downtown with the co-work space, the living lab, that sort of thing.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve motion 2024-99?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion made for Mr. Chestnut, second for Mr. Smith. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Motion 2024, hold on, make sure I'm on the right one. -100.
Motion 2024-100 to reappoint 3 members to the Community Appearance Board.
Okay, the terms of Seth McCoy, Joe Jumper, and Mayor Jerem expire on December 31st, 2024. All wish for reappointment, as well as chairman's recommendation of reappointment of all 3. Their new terms will expire on December 31st, 2027. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the
Second.
reappointment.
Motion from Mr. Louder, second from Dr. Connor. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Motion 2024-101.
Motion 2024-101 to declare certain vehicles abandoned or derelict pursuant to the authority of Article 41 of Title 56, South Carolina Code of Laws, 2001.
Okay, is there anyone here who represents any of these vehicles? Okay, may I please have a motion to declare?
Motion to declare.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Louder, second from Mr. Chestnut. Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any non-agenda items from the public?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Any communications from council or staff?
Merry Christmas and happy holidays.
We do need to, after the first of the year, we have to make a new appointment for Coast RTA. So if everybody will be thinking about some potential candidates for that, if you want to talk with me about what they are looking for, I'm happy to talk with you about that, but that's something we'll address after the first of the year. And we all wish all of you and your families a very blessed holiday and Merry Christmas. And we will see you next year. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Good meeting, madam.